Come on, you stupid piece of garbage. What's wrong with you, you dumb car? Jeez, what is the problem? Another beautiful day here in the workshop. We have the bottom end rotating assembly installed. The next step is to install the camshaft. This camshaft is it's a Howard's cam. It's a hydraulic roller. Advertised duration is 276, 284 on 110 degree lobe separation angle. Duration at 50 is 224, 232. Pretty good radical-ish cam, street cam. Now I am going to install it using the 4 degrees advanced keyway. I've already marked my timing set so that I know which keyway to use. The instructions with it tell which keyway is which. I'm going to advance it because I want more bottom end torque than I'm worried so much about high end horsepower in this car. So we're going to advance it. I've got the measurements, the duration, the lifts as on the cam card. We're going to install the cam. I have 2 dial indicators. I just happen to have 2. I already had one, and the other one is from my friend James Deviney. And we are going to set one up so we can measure top dead center accurately on number 1. And then once I have the cam installed and the lifter pairs installed, which is in here, these are the standard tie bar style roller lifters. I can measure the lift using a degree wheel. Now, if you don't know how to measure using a degree wheel, that's what I'm going to do today. Also, the instructions are on the wheel. If you buy one that has the instructions on it, this is, honestly, when I bought it, it was probably the cheapest one. But you can get big ones, small ones. This one's kind of small, but it does the job. We're going to have to make a pointer to go into one of the holes. It's just going to be a bolt with a piece of wire to point to 0. Once we know top dead center, rotating the engine on the number 1 cylinder. We will measure how much each lifter raises and lowers in relationship to top dead center as you rotate the engine. So we want to make sure that the timing events are in the proper number of degrees on the degree wheel. If they're out of spec, you can get offset keyways to advance or retard the entire assembly so that everything is in spec. And this is just to make sure that the camshaft is ground correctly and that everything's happening the way it's supposed to per Howard's instructions. I also have a camshaft lock plate to install, and somewhere around here I have a button that we're going to have to install in the timing cover, because since this is a roller cam, there has to be a thrust button that rides against the timing cover to keep the cam from walking backwards and forwards in the block too much. And that button might have to be machined a little bit in relationship to the cover, so I've got to figure that out. I don't know how to do it. What could possibly go wrong? So the first thing I'm going to do is take the cam out. I'm going to clean it, put some assembly lube on it, and I have a big bolt I'm going to use. I don't have one of those handles that you use to install a camshaft. I'm just going to use a big bolt in one of the holes in the front and get it in place. Make sure it's still turning free, which it should, because it turned free when we installed the bearings. So we should be good to go there. And we will start on that assembly. Okay, I've got the camshaft wiped down and put my little bolt in. I'm going to put assembly lube on each journal as I go in, because you don't want anything to be dry on those new cam bearings that we just fought to install. That was an interesting experience for somebody that's never done it before. So maybe I use too much bearing assembly lube on these. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Now, since this is a roller cam, I do not have to put it on each of the lifter lobes, because The lifters we're going to pre-soak in motor oil before we install them. Okay, like that. Wipe some of that off. Now, only do 2 at a time. You want to go nice and slow, nice and straight. And of course, I'm already fighting with it. There it goes. Don't force anything. Be careful with that cam gear. You want it to slide through nice and easy. Once you get it like that, then you can do your next lobe or journal. Like that. And then move forward. Nice and slow. And then the next one. Again, probably too much assembly lube, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, all this stuff can go wherever it goes inside the engine, or in this case, since there's no oil pan on it, it's probably going to go on the shop floor. Who cares? You can't see what you're doing, so you just kind of have to go slow and careful. Now, this is where things get the most difficult. Getting the last one in, because the only leverage you've really got is if you've got one of those nice installation handles, that handle, or in my case, this bolt. So now, I'm going to rotate it up to the top, like that. There it is, just like that. That's all the excess that wiped off. Whatever. Now we take this bolt out. Throw that back in the plies. And then we're going to install the cam gear. Notice there's 3 holes. Well, there's 4 holes. One's offset and smaller. The smaller hole is for the locating dowel on the camshaft. Like that. Then we have our retaining bolts. Which I probably should have opened ahead of time, but I didn't. And this is the lock plate. Now the lock plate will retain the cam button in there. Right now, I'm not so worried about all that. Well, I'll go ahead and put it on now, just in case I get lucky and everything fits right the first time. So the button fits in that recess there, all the way back to the cam. This lock plate goes over it, and then once we're certain that we've got it right, we will lock the tabs over the cam. So we'll get these screwed in. And this is loose, but it's going to ride against the timing cover. Once the timing cover's in place, that'll be snug. And you just want to make sure everything is smooth, and it seems close there. So I'm going to put a feeler gauge behind that, just to make sure we have an air gap. And then we have to tighten these up, but we can't tighten them up until we have the timing gear on. So the timing gear, we've located the 4 degrees advanced, and this goes over the end of the crank. And I gotta get a wrench. We gotta turn everything to line up. So we want the crank. That's our mark that I made for 4 degrees advanced. This tooth is the one that has to be straight up. Like that. And we're going to rotate the cam around till that tooth that I've marked, because there's a dot on it, lines up with the crank. And let's see if we can get all this to jimmy together. I might have to take that cam gear back off. Probably will have to take that cam gear back off. Yep. So we're going to carefully tap the crank gear in with a socket. Like that. And then we got to make sure everything's all lined back up again. That one's a little bit stiff. We might need a wrench on that one. Okay, so we got on this gear set, there's a dot on the cam gear and a triangle on the crank gear, and they line up with each other, dot to dot. I've got it set for 4 degrees advanced, and we gotta get these tightened up. Again, we're not worried about getting this torqued tight yet, because I know I got to come back and put that cam button in. But just getting them finger tight will get everything where it should be. And then we will take our wrench and make sure everything's turning free again. And it's not. We have a problem. The cam is touching the block for sure. So I've got to figure this out. I don't know if I need a thrust bearing back there or not. So I've got to figure that out. All right, well, we might be stopped. So let me turn the camera off and do some research. Okay, crisis averted. Once I've tightened these up, snugged everything, pulled everything in position, I'm going to go ahead and torque these to 20 foot-pounds, which is what the factory service manual calls for. And I'm not using any sort of a Loctite, because when I'm satisfied everything's right, I'm going to fold these tabs over to retain these bolts, just to make sure that they can't rotate back out. All right, now that that's torqued, when I rotate the engine, everything turns freely again like it should. And again, I'm not using a real big wrench here. There is a lot of drag because all the rings and everything are in place, but it's not super locked up or anything. And I'm going to pull it back around so these dots line up. And that should be at top dead center on number 1. And now we have to figure out how to set up. This is the part that takes all the monkeying around, because these are magnetic bases. So once you put them in place, turn the knob, it locks the base in place. Now you have to mess with all the adjustment knobs to turn all the parts and pieces around and fiddle with it until you can get. See, now this isn't happy because there. You got to make sure you can tighten all of your locking knobs, and you want, well, slid right off. So again, see how this is fiddly. It takes time to get all this stuff set up. Lock it back down, and you want your base to put your pointer as close to straight up and down as you can. Then we're going to come around, and you can rotate the face unless it all falls off. You don't want it to hit the floor, because these measuring instruments are actually fairly precise. You don't want to mess them up. All right, lock it back down, and then you can rotate the face to 0 it. And then there's a fine adjustment here. You can bring that in. If I had my glasses, I could tell if that's at 0 or not. Okay, so we want that pointer straight up at 0. Can you see that? Yeah, you can kind of see that. Here, let me move the camera a little bit. Okay, so that's straight up at 0 right now. Okay, we should be at top dead center. Now we're going to confirm that by using the wrench and turning it around. The pointer will drop off and come back up, and we're going to see if it goes up or down at all. So as we rotate, it shouldn't increase, but it will decrease all the way down off. All right, we were not at top dead center. So we're showing 1 tooth off right here, which might be our 4 degrees advance. So let's we can't rekey that, so that's where we need to be. So let's 0 our top dead center. Oh, we're turning. This is not the best mag base in the world, but as with everything else in my life, it's kind of the best I've got. All right, let's reposition everything here. Let's take the spring out of this. Okay, we're at 0 there. So let's rotate around. We're off the piston. As the piston comes back around, now we're showing 0 over here. Let's rotate around again. We went past it. All right, so we're at 10. Let's back that up to 0. All right, I got to reset this so it's better. Okay, there's an awful lot going on here. I have this dial indicator on the exhaust lifter in the valley at 0. This one is still set to indicate top dead center. I've installed my degree wheel with a pointer, this wire just going to a bolt, that was set to top dead center with this wheel screwed in place. It's not important that the wheel is indexed correctly to the crank. What's important is that when this is at top dead center, your pointer points at 0. Okay? So, according to our cam card here, which I've got down here so I can read it while I'm doing, when this indicator, which is on the exhaust lifter, reads 50 thou lift, we should be at, according to this card, 50.3 degrees. Now we have moved it 4 degrees in the timing set. So we need to be at 54.3 degrees. So what I'm going to do is rotate with my wrench until this pointer points at 50, which is going to take a little bit of doing because I got to rotate all the way around. Okay, we went past top dead center on this indicator. So we should start coming up here shortly. There we go. We're going up. Go nice and slow. Right there, 50. Okay? So then we come down here to our pointer, and we're pointed at, it's hard to see because of the angle, we're at 54 and a fraction of a hair of a line, okay? So on the exhaust side, our opening is correct, right? So now we need to rotate it around. The exhaust should start to close at 2.3. So since I don't have any springs here, I'm keeping my finger on the lifter. We're going to rotate on around. See, we're going past our max lift. And we're going back around down. You can watch the small counter there. And we jammed up. Okay. And going back around to one more loop. And we come down to 50 here. And on the wheel, we're showing off. Okay, now we're right. We're right. So we're right there. So the cam, at least on the exhaust side, is cut correctly. All right. So now we have to move this one over and to the next lifter in this pair, and we're going to check to make sure that we're opening and closing in the correct spot. And the other thing I want to do, well, I might not be at bottom lift, are we? Yeah, we were. Okay. Now I want to check for total lift, which according to the card, the max valve lift is 0.530. So we want the small indicator to go to the 5 and then to the 3, and hopefully it will be okay there. So we got to go all the way around again, top dead center. All right, so the exhaust is opening. And, sorry. Well, we're reading 3.45 right there. Oh, that's going to be 3.45 times the rocker arm ratio to get to your maximum lift. Okay, so that's probably right. I got to do the math on that, make sure we're there, but we're also using 1.6 rocker, so that's going to mess everything up. So the important thing is at least the exhaust is cut on the right thing. So now I've got to reset all this back around, and I want to do the same thing. Right now I'm just pushing down on the lifters to get the intake lifter to the bottom. I'm going to move this over. I'm going to measure it again. You just want to make sure that your cam is beginning to open. This is moving off 0, beginning to open when the degree wheel is pointing to the correct degrees according to what it says on your cam card. Take into account any degrees you move forward and backward in your timing set. Okay, so I'm going to move it over, and we should see the intake opening at 6.3 degrees plus 4, so 10.3 degrees. So I'm going to set it up, see if this is opening at 10.3 degrees on my degree wheel, and if it is, then I can disassemble this. I'm going to start soaking my lifters because I can't put my heads on until I work on them. So we double check the exhaust side. We're going to repeat, lather, rinse, repeat, same thing for the intake. All right, I just reset everything. We're at 50 thou list and we're reading 10.4. So the intake side is opening at 10.4 degrees, which according to our cam card should be 6.3 plus 4 because we've advanced. That 0.01, man, come on. So we're within manufacturing specs, and also my rigonometry with all this, you know, I'm not a professional and I don't have this stuff as absolutely precise as I can probably, but we're pretty good. We double checked the cam. The cam's cut correct. I had no doubts, but always do it just to make sure, because if there's a variation in this crankshaft from SCAT, the Howard's cam, the Cloy's timing set, and the General Motors block, everything could be all out of whack. And you just want to double check to make sure your timing events are happening the way they're supposed to according to the camshaft that you've ordered for the combination you've built. It's not hard to do, as you see, that I spent the most time getting all this contraption set up and locked in place just so I can reach those gauges going up and down. Do you have to have two of them? Absolutely not. Do you have to have a degree wheel? Yes. Do you have to have one dial indicator and a magnet base, or some sort of a base, some sort of a way to attach that indicator? Yes, you do have to, because you have to be able to see precisely, not just feeling with your finger, when that thing starts to go up and down. This setup is my setup. This is cheap stuff I bought at a car show. This is my friend James's setup. This is a good Starrett. This is a much better base than I've got. So this is an expensive setup. This is a cheap setup. As you can see, you can do the same thing with either one. The important thing to do is to make sure that you're accurately recording, as accurate as your instruments are. So all this is done. I'm going to put all these tools away. And the next thing to do is going to be to look at working on the cylinder heads.